You either live by the gun, or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I know it was you, Miss Magenta, in the recording closet. Mr. Tuxedo saw you, and Miss Fatness Neverlane heard it from across the room. I swear on my name as Captain Ketchup.
We're gonna do Clue this week.
Yeah. That intro took, 4 tries?
It was worth it.
Yeah. So, yes, we are doing Clue, and we are going by code names this episode. I am Captain Ketchup.
And I am Miss Magenta.
And we will be your hosts.
Yes.
Yes.
Brought to you by Mr. Body, somewhere.
Somewhere. So, I've had an interest in Clue since you showed it to me the first time, 2 years ago, something like that.
And I have loved Clue from the moment that I can remember.
Yes. And I like Tim Curry, but this is one, I never really got to at any point.
And we kind of had this discussion, because I also like Tim Curry.
Mm-hmm.
But I have never seeked out a movie because Tim Curry starred in it. He just happens to be in most movies that I like. Yeah. And it's one of those things where, it's not even I get to the movie theater, I see the poster, I'm like, oh, Tim Curry, how exciting. It's I'm a third of the way through the movie, I'm like, I like Tim Curry. Yeah. Tim Curry's a good actor.
He's fun.
He's a fun actor. He plays fun roles in movies that I think are fun, and honestly, a lot of his movies necessarily didn't do super great when they came out, but most of them have become cult classics in different realms, different genres. Yeah,
because Rocky Horror Picture Show legend, his role as Pennywise, which, not gonna lie, I still think Skarsgård did a better job.
Yeah,
I like the newer It better. I haven't seen this, to be fair, I haven't seen the second part, which I've heard is a bit rough.
Yeah, I haven't seen the second part either. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where he plays a role, and then 10 years later, everyone's like, I love this movie. Yeah. Hated it when it came out, but now that it's old, beautiful. Mwah. Mwah.
And so, before we get into it, Miss Magenta, what are we partaking to quench our thirst tonight?
Well, we need a stiff drink for all these dead bodies we keep finding.
Yes. So, we are having not brandy.
Not brandy.
But cognac.
Cognac. Because we are now old men.
Yes,
old English men.
This is also what I have because it's a birthday gift from Philip.
Yes. So, cheers.
Prost. Mm.
Not bad.
It's a good one.
It is a good one.
Ugh.
And we didn't pour half of it onto the table.
Yes.
Good job.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I love watching that scene. He pours himself such a tall drink, and then everyone else, most of it's on the table.
Yeah. So Clue. It's a 1985 film based on the board game of the same name.
Yep.
Which was first, I learned, manufactured in 1948 by Waddingtons in the UK as Cluedo.
It is still Cluedo for everyone who's not American.
And by Parker Brothers in the United States.
Yes. Yeah. And Clue is one of the old school board game movies.
Yes.
And arguably my favorite board game movie.
Well, and as I found, there's not too many board game movies out there.
And there's a good reason for that.
Yeah.
Clue's one of the few board games that a lot of people know. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, it's not too hard to make a plot for.
Yeah.
It makes its own plot. That's the whole point of the game.
Well, yeah, and I think I'm definitely gonna talk about it in our next short episode or spotlight episode. We're doing board games and video game adaptations for our next spotlight. Yes. So I will talk about it a little bit more in depth than that, but that's one thing about board games is that they end up being so open-ended that there's a goal. But it's how you get to the goal that is super freeing.
Yeah, and Clue is one of the few ones that I think, granted, when it came out, a lot of people were not a fan of the plot of this movie.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I can see why. But now that it's aged, now that the humor has had time to settle, and I think now that people have had time to not expect much from it, they appreciate. I think it's finally hit that sweet spot of like, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel with Clue, but you enjoy the silliness that is trying to make a plot out of a board game movie.
Yes. And so, before I want to get into the movie, I actually do want to go into a little bit of the history of adaptations of Clue.
Sure.
Because this is not the only version.
No, it is not.
First off, the name Cluedo was a play on the word clue and ludo, which ludo is Latin for I play, and I guess is another term for British parcheesi.
Sure. I don't claim to understand British talk.
No, we've had this talk of like, well, not necessarily British. We don't understand Welsh slang.
We do not understand any Welsh slang whatsoever, and I won't lie. There's a lot of just like standard words that like I don't remember that they mean other things and other exactly. So the first official theatrical adaptation of Clue also came out in 1985. As well as also in the form of a play which was penned by Robert Duncan. Yep.
And I actually am kind of intrigued by how the play worked. So at the beginning of the play, an audience member would pick 3 solution cards that would determine the ending.
Ooh, fun.
There are 216 possible endings to the play.
Okay. Yes, I like it. It reminds me a lot. I don't know if you've gotten to do this yet. It's such an old person thing, but I enjoy it greatly. There is a type of theater that's like a small dinner party style theater. And a lot of these, the actors interact with you as you dine. And so one of the ones that I've been on, which was a lot of fun, was in a train car. There was like 6 actors, and while the play was going, we had to figure out who'd done it. And like part of our interaction was part of the play. Okay,
so it's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons a little bit.
It was Dungeons and Dragons-esque, only, full-on theater production with delicious steak, and you get to like talk to the actors and ask them questions. Yeah. It was a lot of fun, and I kind of see where they were trying to go with that, because granted, doing it that way takes up a lot of time, and arguably a lot of, you have to hope your audience participates. Yeah. Whereas if someone just draws 3 cards, you're guaranteed not to see the same play twice, probably. That's pretty clever. I like it.
Yeah, I do like that. And your description actually reminded me of a movie I did a chiller review for, which, by the way, check us out on Instagram at TGTVTW_podcast.
Plug.
Yeah. Chiller and glitter reviews.
Yeah.
But it was, I think it was a Norwegian film called Cadaver.
Okay.
It's not very good, but
yeah,
it kind of made me think of that setting, but like if Clue had a horror theme.
If Clue was less cottage murder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, outside of the board game, and after the movie, there is actually a 1986 documentary titled Clue, Movies, Murders, and Mysteries.
Yes. And then for those of you who really love the movie Clue, there was also a book that came out the same year as the movie, and it does tie actually into the movie. So like if you were really into the movie Clue, you can own it in a book.
Yeah. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, and it's not done a whole lot anymore, but I have a absolute garbage ton of old books. Disney used to do this a lot. Where like, example, The Shaggy DA came out as a movie, and then they just like slapped the script onto some pages and shipped it out. And they put the like cover and everything on it. Apple Dumpling Gang, same thing happened to them. Yeah, just about everything. Tarzan had a book that was literally just the script of the movie. Yeah. And then like the writers would add little bits in here or there that like, if you really wanted to, you'd be like, oh, his eyes are green. I can't tell because it's so blurry. But like, that's pretty much what this book is.
Well, speaking of blurry visuals.
Yes.
In 1992, there was a game adaptation for the Super Nintendo and one in 1998 for Windows.
And I have seen the Windows one played. I've watched a walkthrough of it, and oh boy, does it look Fun.
Well, I will admit, I have never played Clue.
It's fun. If you like Clue. It's like Monopoly. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah, my family was more into, like, Risk.
Fair.
Strategy.
Fair. We had one board game in our family, and after Grandpa whooped the children so badly they had to pay real money for property, we don't play anymore.
I feel ya.
Yeah.
And so, outside of video games and television, there also were 2 TV shows, one in Australia and the UK. They were both game shows.
Jelly.
And the Australia show ran from 1992 to 1993, while the UK show ran from 1992 to 1993.
Hey, you know what? That's pretty good for a game show.
Yeah. And the last, there's a couple more adaptations after this, too.
Of course.
There's an off-Broadway musical that ran from 1997 to 1999.
I love an off-Broadway musical.
It was the same premise as the other one, 216 possible conclusions.
Again, it's a cute idea.
Currently is unavailable due to restrictions from Hasbro and legalities in question.
That's fair, but also, like, if a local theater group would like to do that and just not tell anyone, I will come and pay you money.
Maybe.
Someone. Under the table theatrical performances.
Underground theater.
Well, hi.
I cannot wait for the sun to be coming down later.
You're telling me that because it's only 5 in the afternoon, he thinks it's dinner time because it's dark outside?
Yes, Charlie's a dipshit. So, anywho, the last adaptation we actually have is a television miniseries that was released in 2011 from The Hub.
That's pretty late.
Yes.
2011 for Clue? That's pushing it.
Yep.
And it does bear some mention. There is a new movie that resembles Clue, and when it came out, a lot of people thought that this was going to be the, like, spiritual predecessor to Clue. What was it called? Knives Out.
Yes.
Knives Out, arguably I can see where you're coming from, for those of you who have seen it, and thought, yes, this is the next evolution of Clue. Similar genre, not Clue.
It's more Murder on the Orient Express meets the comedy of Clue.
Yeah. There's definitely some Clue comedy, but it has been doctored up for the more discerning audience.
Yep. And so, now, Miss Magenta.
Yes.
Before we get into the movie, I want our audience to know that I took extensive notes to try and determine which of the 3 endings was the true ending. And I will tell you, I wasted my time.
Yes,
because there is no answer.
There is no answer, and also there is a secret 4th ending, which according to some of the behind-the-scenes people, that is the quote-unquote true ending.
Yes, I will get to that at the end. But yes, so how do we start a board game-based movie?
In thunderstorm, dark, rainy night.
Ominous clouds above.
Yes.
A car drives through the woods as Tim Curry pulls up to a foreboding manor. And
also, yes, I understand that Tim Curry's character has a name for this whole thing. He's the butler. However, it is just Tim Curry to me. This is one of the only roles Tim Curry plays where he is just Tim Curry.
He's Wadsworth.
He's Wadsworth, but like this and then the time when he's in Home Alone 2 as the receptionist at the hotel, this is just Tim Curry. I don't care what that character's name is.
Yep. And so, as he approaches the door, a pair of dogs lunge toward him, and he tosses them bones to get them away, and tightens their chains, but the dogs get the last laugh. He steps in poop. Which
is arguably the worst joke out of this whole thing, but I giggle every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just end here either. I appreciate this poop joke because unlike other poop jokes, where it is farted and gone, this one lingers.
Oh, that's one way to put it. So as he enters, I do want to mention that I do appreciate the fancy entranceway of wood, marble, stone, and plaster, which...
This set was wonderful. I love it.
Everything was built on a soundstage, minus, I think, the library or the parlor. One of the rooms was not a soundstage. As well, you'll appreciate this. All the decorations were authentic 18th and 19th century furnishes.
They were, and guess where some of them came from?
The Roosevelt estate.
Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt lent them props for this movie. Also, fun fact, this set was later bought, so if you remember the show Dynasty, it makes an appearance. A couple of the rooms do.
I don't know that show.
Me neither, but I read a lot about it, and I know some people who watched it a lot and kept telling me I need to watch it.
Was it Brian?
No, actually not Brian this time.
Yes, he is filling us up with other...
Oh yeah, he's started
binges.
Another show too.
Ah, Jesus.
I don't know how he gets through them so fast.
I don't know. But anyway, so we get a big white lettering telling us that the setting is New England, 1954 at Hill House.
And after this, nobody cares.
Yes, exactly. Well, actually, I do think
it is nice.
The era, knowing the date is what was important. Yes. It could happen in any other state.
Honestly, it could have just said somewhere remotely kind of close to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
That is really all I needed.
Yes.
But yeah, the date is very pertinent for half of these jokes to land.
Yeah. And so Wadsworth enters a room where we have a very well endowed maid.
Wearing the most ridiculous maid costume.
Yes.
It's so short in both directions.
Short and long.
It's like if a terrible anime maid.
Yes.
But like she's not meant to be an anime maid. She's meant to be an actual maid.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. And so she's polishing some glassware, and Wadsworth enters to check if everything's okay.
And we'll be ready in time for supper.
As our first guest, Colonel Mustard arrives, my arch nemesis.
Colonel Mustard is a fun character, I think. Because, granted, this is the part where Clue, I think, stands out a little bit more from other board games to me. Mm-hmm. Because we already had character names put out for us.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like, oh, it's in the manual and you had to read it. It's part of the board game. You know exactly which character you're getting. Yeah,
like, I do like that they kept the names because I recently rewatched the first adaptation of Dungeons and Dragons last year. Ronaldo and Snail.
Yes.
But I also, at the same time, like, I started hating it, and then I got, like, halfway into the movie, and I'm like, you know what? I actually kind of appreciate this, because it sounds like an actual D&D campaign where some
idiot named their character Snail.
Snail, yeah, exactly. Snail the Thief.
Yes.
Yes.
So quick. But yeah, and I also like that the ties that they made with the characters' names, which is what they started with, mm-hmm. and then the character designs are all, like, they're definitely bold enough that you have no question of who's who, but also it's not like Colonel Mustard is mustard colored. No. Like...
And, well, we also get stopped, too, because Mustard begins saying his real name, but Wadsworth cuts him off because they're only supposed to stick to their identities.
Their code names for tonight.
Yes. And so he takes Mustard to the library with Yvette as Mrs. White arrives.
Also, there is still the poop joke going on throughout this whole scene.
Yes, because as he's...
Every single person who enters this mansion sniffs, makes a terrible face, and then checks their shoes to see if they have poop on their shoes.
Yep.
None of them have poop on their shoes.
And Yvette and Miss White meet, and there is tension.
There is immediate tension. Also, fun little character bit, Miss White is dressed all in black for the majority of this movie, mm-hmm. except for the lining of her coat, which is pearl white.
Yes.
Delightful.
And so now we cut to a woman on the side of the road.
In distress, her car isn't going.
Broken down, and she's using her sex appeal to get a lift.
She's real lucky that a very shallow man drove by.
It is Miss Scarlet, which, fun fact about mm-hmm. this character. At the 25th anniversary screening, the director mentioned that Carrie Fisher was originally cast.
Yeah.
But she dropped out for rehab.
Yeah, you know, good on her for putting health first, but...
Yeah.
It could have been interesting to have Carrie Fisher play. I mean, she's a good actress. She honestly could have played anything, I think.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, once you see these people as the characters in Clue, it's really hard to untie them from that. Especially since, like, no one's in so much makeup or eccentric bits that, like, they're all, while eccentric, they're all realistic enough on set.
Yeah, and, I mean, you bring that up, but I think David Lloyd, the only reason he sticks out to me so much is because, one, he's Doc from Back to the Future.
Yeah, but also, like, while he is definitely still Doc from Back to the Future, he's just different enough.
You kind of forget that he would eventually be Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, her savior also turns out to be a party guest.
Yes.
Professor Plum.
Professor Plum.
And now Miss Peacock arrives, and
I love
Yvette
Miss Peacock.
is sent to check out on dinner. And Peacock is annoying.
Oh, hella annoying.
I hate her.
Yes, that is her whole role, is for you to find her super obnoxious, and I love it.
And as this happens, Mr. Green is now arriving.
Yes, Mr. Green.
Yes.
Yes.
And then we are cut back to the car with Miss Scarlet and Professor Plum, and they are just approaching the house, but the car won't budge because I like this little subtle humor to it.
Mm-hmm.
The car is frightened.
The car is scared.
So scary. To be fair, the house does feel like the house from Psycho.
Oh yeah,
at least from the outside.
Oh yeah, it's very ominous looking. It's got like almost a castle thing going on. Like, it's definitely mansion, but like add some spires and we've got medieval castle with dragon sort of thing going on.
Yeah. Or I'm a homicidal maniac.
Definitely some homicidal maniac stuff going on too.
So as they get up to the doorway, Professor Plum makes his move on Miss Scarlet and grabs her ass.
Butt toucher.
As Wadsworth opens the door. And
is Wadsworth surprised, deterred by any of this? No.
No.
He is a butler of the highest accord.
He asks if they are acquainted, and they say, no, not just met. Yeah. And so as they bring them into the house, the dinner gong is rung, and they make their move to the dining room, where Mustard begins to question what Wadsworth is even doing in the house.
Colonel Mustard,
a butler. He buttles.
He buttles. Keeps things tighty. And this is where I think all of these people are such caricatures, but they're done in such a way that they balance each other out so that no one sticks out as a caricature.
Yes.
Which works really well, because like you said, Miss Peacock, hella fucking annoying. But because she's balanced out by the nervousness of and suspicion of Colonel Mustard, and Miss White's cool aloofness, and Miss Scarlet's witty attack to anything that scares or frightens her. Like, they all work.
Yeah, and I actually, as you know, comedy is not really my strong suit when it comes to movies.
Fair.
I was actually listening to commentary for upcoming episode, and I thought it was, the commentator, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, brought down that comedy only works like if you don't have to try and explain it, and if it just happens, you can't force it. You just have to say the lines. Not the commentator, the guy who was interviewing, his last name's Lemon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and he ended up becoming a famous comedic actor. Not trying to give away too much of a future episode, but yeah, it was interesting just because I've always known that, or not always, for a while I've known that, and I have a greater appreciation for good comedies now, because comedies are always rooted in, or comedy is just drama in disguise.
Yes. And this movie is both drama and comedy simultaneously dancing across the floor.
Yes, exactly. It does lean more towards the comedic, but like you said, It's a believable comedic.
Yeah. And part of the reason why I think the constant over-the-top comedy works in this is because they don't let you ponder the comedy. Yeah. So this movie is made up of one-liners. It's just a bunch of one-liners strung together into a plot, really.
Yeah, and it's relatively fast-paced because things just happen back to back to back.
And because things are happening back to back to back, none of those one-liners feel like they're that one line that the character gets to say.
Mm-hmm.
No one's the one-liner person where it's like, oh god, so-and-so's opening his mouth again. Everyone in this movie has the exact same speed, pacing, and timing. Yep. And because of that, they all work seamlessly. And even if some of the jokes, which we'll get to later, nowadays don't hit, because they're all going so fast back to back, you don't have time to think about them, especially if you're watching this just once.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think that's why this movie's cult following has really latched onto it. Because you can pick whatever line you want from this movie, and they're all gold.
Oh yeah. No, I do. I actually have come to appreciate the writing in this movie. So, after being questioned of what he's even doing there, they are served their first dishes of kipling in shark fin soup. A
strange food to be served in this dinner party. But
all the while, the women are glaring at Yvette, which that's the name of the maid.
Yeah.
And all the men are ogling her.
Yes. Minus one very clumsy Mr. Green, who has succeeded in spilling multiple things by this point.
Which is actually... Ooh, I did not catch that.
He's so nervous up until their secrets come out, and then he stops dropping things.
Well, and even then, that's a pretty good... because... Yeah, that's a good leaning about his secret.
Yeah, and honestly, that's one of the nice things about the writing of this movie is, it's a silly comedy, and it's not very deep, and you can't figure out who done it even if you wanted to. Because none of the details line up, but boy, the details in this movie.
Oh man, it's...
Every one-liner is placed purposefully.
Well, I think that's maybe what makes it so great is the detail.
Oh, yeah, this movie's riddled full of it to the point where, like we just said, like, characters do have a development. Like, they change before and after their secrets come out. Their personalities are slightly different in different ways, too. Some are...
When put under stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Miss Peacock rambles obsessively until her secret comes out.
Which we're about to get to.
Which is so rambly.
Because everyone is waiting for the mysterious Mr. Body.
Their host of the evening.
Yes. Where, Miss Peacock breaks the ice with what I can only describe as a slurry of words.
It really is. But in that slurry of words, we get so many bits.
Yeah.
We know that everyone at the table has something to do with DC.
Well, it first starts off with, she starts slipping that she's doing all this stuff, and Mr. Green says he knows who Miss Peacock is.
Yes.
And that, Professor Plum mentions that he works for family planning for the World Health Organization.
And this is another thing where both the time this movie's set in and then the time that this movie came out in, they felt it important to explain to the audience what the World Health Organization is.
Yeah.
Like, they have to, because he says the acronym, he kind of gives a little backstory, and then I think one of the jokes is they go, the who? And he goes, the World Health Organization. And that's something that, especially after last year and this year, I don't think anybody has any questions on that organization anymore.
Not at all. It also gets sussed out that Mustard also lives in DC, as well as Miss Scarlet.
They are all tied together.
And then everyone at the party is a government stooge in some way.
Which,
mystery.
While my husband and I were watching this, he laughingly goes, if this movie was set where we live, it wouldn't have been, is the government involved? It would have been, is Walmart involved?
Yeah. Yeah, true. And so, as they begin to argue, the doorbell rings.
The final guest.
It's none other than Mr. Body.
Who, while being dead for most of this movie, that's not a spoiler,
no,
somehow does have a really good presence for the few minutes that he's alive and speaks.
Yeah, well,
like, he's menacing, he's slimy feeling.
Well, because as everyone's demanding what's going on, he's being the king of the dicks.
Oh, he is. He is refusing food from the pretty Yvette multiple times, and he doesn't even say so in a, like, useful way, like, oh no, I already ate. He just says, take it away. I don't want it.
And he even says, I already ate.
Yeah, like, could have told her that before she brought all this food out, dude.
Yeah. And on top of that, he even doesn't know why he's there. He got an envelope too.
He's not actually the host. He is another guest.
Nope. But Mr. Body says that he does know Yvette.
He does.
Seems like everyone knows Yvette.
Yes.
Yes. And so, to mellow everyone out, they leave the dining room for coffee and brandy.
Across the hall, which I wish I was rich enough to have a room where I can relax with coffee and brandy after a fancy dinner.
I mean,
I guess I could move from my living room to my kitchen, but that's not the same.
No, because, there has to be a door. There has to be a threshold you have to cross.
There does. And I would like it to make that satisfying click noise that all these doors make in this. They all have a good thud to them.
Yes.
Solid doors.
Yes. And so, as they're sitting there getting a little relaxed, Wadsworth produces an envelope to explain what they all have in common, and explains that he has trapped them all there. All the doors are locked and the windows are barred.
You cannot leave.
Yes. And as he says that, Mr. Body tries to flee for the first time to the sunroom, but the dogs appear, like in the beginning of the first Resident Evil game.
Yes. A different set of dogs, too, by the way. Don't know where these dogs came from.
Yeah, random yard Doberman?
Yeah, like you do, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is different than your front door guard dog.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have no clue.
I don't know where this dog came from.
And so, back in the office, or whatever room it is.
The lounge.
The secret is now out, that they were all there because they are being blackmailed. And more of their backstories are revealed. Plum used to treat psychosis and delusions of grandeur, and they mention, though his job has not changed, or has changed very little since changing to the government.
Oh, such a one-liner.
But he was fired after he was found out to be diddling a patient.
Lost his medical license, even.
Diddling's my own word for it.
I like it.
Yes. And then we find out that the annoying as hell Miss Peacock,
yes,
her husband is a senator, and she's been taking bribes to get people to meet with him.
Yes, she is taking money under the table. How naughty.
And we got someone even naughtier now. Miss Scarlet runs a...
Scarlet.
Oh, actually I just realized Scarlet Letter.
Yes.
She runs a specialized hotel in telephone services for escorts.
To put a discerning gentleman in the company of a young lady for a short while.
Yes.
And also, but I like Miss Scarlet because out of everyone is so nervous. And when they get to Miss Scarlet's character, they go, well, did you do it? And she goes, oh yeah, I did it. And everyone in DC knows it.
Yeah, we even learned that Mr. Mustard is a client.
Yeah.
Which I actually wonder, do those telephone services even exist anymore?
Oh, they do.
They do?
They do, but I don't think they are as profitable as they once were. The internet has changed so much.
Yes, it has. Interesting. I just never thought of it because we brought it up in a handful of movies where...
It's such an old-timey bit.
Yeah, or not even that, like they put a fake number in there and it ends up being a real number.
That's always to something shady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, we learn more of reveals. Miss White, her husband disappeared under mysterious circumstances.
Her most recent husband.
Most recent.
Out of 4.
Not unlike, not much unlike that bitch Carol Baskins.
At least Mrs. White didn't feed him to a tiger.
That we know of.
That we can prove.
We also learned that she pulled a Lorraine Bobbitt and cut off his head.
Yes.
Also, her first husband disappeared too.
I think all of her husbands have mysteriously died.
Yes.
Because later on, like, they directly ask her isn't it weird that your other husband also died? And then later on, they're like, how many husbands have you had, Miss White? And she's like, mine or other women's? And they're like, yours. Yeah. I think she says, like, something like 4.
Yeah.
All of them are dead.
Oh, yeah.
This woman is just collecting life insurance money.
Yes. And, one thing to keep in mind for this next reveal...
Because, oh boy.
The movie's set in the 50s, so it is a big deal for the time frame.
Yes.
Mr. Green's big secret is that he is a homosexual.
Which is exactly how he says it in the movie.
Yes. And it reminds me of, I love old, like, 20s, 30s, and 40s, like, PSA movies. There's one that I think is from around this time frame, and my favorite line, it's a horrible one because it's completely wrong. It equates homosexuality to pedophilia and, homicidal tendencies.
Oh, old-timey times.
But my favorite line from it, just because it's so stupid, beware the ever-present homosexual.
Oh, no.
It's so stupid.
I do appreciate the route that this movie had tried to take with it, because, well, I feel like we could have found something better for Mr. Green to potentially have at his dirty secret. This was a big topic from the time period, which also ties into all the red herring jokes later. Yeah, because this is also around the time of, like, Betty and Barney Hill being abducted, and they had to keep things secret because they were an interracial couple. Yeah, and like, so I appreciate that, you know, throughout the movie, Mr. Green's like, I'm not bothered by it, I don't care, but, like, it will cost me my job. I need my job. Yeah, exactly. Which, you know, could have been done differently, I guess, but also this movie tries very hard to put itself in the time period that it's supposed to be in, so, like, I have no answers, I guess. I like it. I think it's fitting. It is, and honestly, I just think if people watch it nowadays, they'd kind of forget. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think when it first comes, you've already kind of forgotten the time period, just because there's so many old-timey movies that, like, have completely forgotten all of the tension that happened during this time. Yeah. And it goes really fast. It comes again later on, and then, like, honestly, all of the communist jokes throughout it kind of help solidify the time period of this movie. Oh, yeah. And honestly, those are the ones that stick out more, like, as far as, like, later on when you're like, that was a weird quote. Oh yeah, this is supposed to be... It's the 50s. We're in the... towards the end of the second Red Scare. Exactly. Yeah. And so, now the biggest reveal of all is that Mr. Body is the one blackmailing everyone, which then Colonel Mustard proceeds to assault him while Mrs. White kicks him in the Franks and Beans. And then other people in the background clap and applaud this. Yes. I also appreciate that there seems to be somewhat of the wide variety of reactions by the different characters. So we've got some yelling, some sitting quietly off to the side. There's, I'm going to kick you in the balls. And then there's, you know, the Colonel's, I'm going to fisticuffs you. But nobody full-on's like, all right, time to kill the dude. Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is, like, they're all supposed to be, like, proper people. Proper / also playing their stereotype. Very much so. Colonel Mustard is the military man. Yes. And Miss White is a man-eater, so her first reaction is to kick him in the balls. Fair. Yeah. Yeah. And so, Wadsworth informs them that the police will be there in 40 minutes, and that their solutions are either to wait for the police, or, as Mr. Body puts it, either murder him or Wadsworth. Yes. Which, I love Tim Curry's reaction to this, because it's like he was not expecting it. Yes. I also appreciate the elaborateness that the different murder props are now brought out. Because they're all brought out in beautiful, perfectly shaped and sized black boxes with ribbons on them. Yep. And all of the items in the boxes are, again, a caricature of the murder weapons from the game. So, like, the rope isn't just a loose rope. It's already tied up into a noose. And not even just like, oh, it's a noose, like, giant honkin' noose. Yeah. The wrench isn't a normal person's wrench. This wrench is meant for, like... It's a Phillips-sized wrench. It's for murdering people or pretending you're Mario. Yes, that is a good way to put it. And also, Body grabs the evidence that he's had with him. Yes, because, of course, if he destroys it, he can continue on. Yes. And then, flash of lightning, the lights go out, but when they come back on, Mr. Body has been slain. He is dead! Ah! Someone heard a gunshot go off in the dark. And now, a game is afoot! And also, up until this point, if you thought this movie was fast-paced, you ain't seen nothing yet. These people are gonna get their 10,000 steps in.
Yes. But also, the accusations begin.
They're flying.
Was the brandy poisoned? Which they hear from the other side of the wall as
Yvette loses it.
Because she has also drinking the brandy.
I have also drinking the brandy.
Drink the brandy. Drinking's not a word. Well, depends on where you're from.
Yeah.
And so Wadsworth now reveals that he was Mr. Body's butler, and he orchestrated all this to take revenge for his wife, as they were also being blackmailed and forced into slave labor.
Yeah, the tragedy.
Also, the reason they were all being blackmailed is because Mr. Body thought that they were all being un-American. Un-American.
In surprisingly different ways.
Yeah. Again, second Red Scare.
Yeah. And also, like, it's another example of, like, the holier-than-thou American standard that, whether or not it was real, because I was not alive during this time period, so I honestly don't know. But according to all the movies and books we watch, was, like, a very real thing of, like, you must be the perfect citizen because anybody could be watching. Anybody could be listening. Yeah. Be careful who your friends are.
Loose lips sink ships.
That whole sort of thing. So, like, it all ties back in, which, I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of, like, true plot cohesion as far as the murder is involved, but the bits that are there are more, like, overbroad strokes, which I like. It makes it feel all one piece. Even if it's not.
And so, as they begin to argue amongst themselves, they realize that one person in the house was not present.
The cook! And so, in the most hilarious comedic style possible, they all, as a group, shimmy over to the kitchen.
Yes.
And this is how they run, with that music playing, for the rest of the movie.
Yes.
And I love it.
Where, upon investigating, the cook has been murdered!
Ah, another body!
The suspicion mounts again.
But who could have possibly murdered the cook?
Yes. So, back in the study, they carry the dead cook back.
And, like, they don't even do it gracefully.
Where...
They, like, flop her into the study.
Nope, they haven't even done that yet. Because as they get to the door, Mr. Body's body has vanished. They just
drop her.
Much like Santa Claus's corpse.
Is exactly like Santa Claus's corpse, actually.
And so they leave the cook's body to find where the other body went. But wait. What's more, they find, wait. Oh yes, sorry. I lost track of where we were at in the movie.
There's a lot of events to go through.
They pull open the evidence where they find negatives of Miss Scarlet in exposed positions, where they're sitting there and they mention that no one can get into that position, and Professor Plum decides, oh yeah, you can do that.
You can totally do that, watch.
And proceeds to grab Miss White, who pushes him off of him.
Yes, because she, despite being a terrible murderer, is a lady.
Totally. And so, in the foyer, they're still searching where when Mr. Body's body falls out of the lavatory, and he is now dead again.
He is dead a second time. And at this point, a candlestick, which is for some reason, and they never say why, perched atop the doorframe,
yes,
falls off and almost kills Tim Curry.
Knocks him out.
Like a light.
I do have a question about this, or I do have an idea.
Okay.
What if he was dead the first time, and someone just hid the body in the closet just to throw everyone off and fuck with them?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But also, like, that would be a lot of work.
I mean...
Bodies are hard to move, man.
I know. But, like, I don't know. It'd still be funny.
It would be.
And so, now is when they decide to put the cook on the arm of the sofa to prevent the knife from going further into her back.
Because, wouldn't want the dead person to have to deal with that.
Yep.
They've also, like, there is no crime scene etiquette going on here. Everyone has touched everything. Everyone has moved everything.
Well, I mean, that's actually pretty accurate, though, too.
Like, yeah, like, knowing not to touch things, I don't think was a common occurrence. Yeah, you had to be, like, some hecka nerd.
Yeah, not really until probably the late 60s, 70s, and 80s.
I think the 80s, definitely. 70s, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Timelines.
Oh, the timelines.
Yes. And so,
Oh, and they've propped Mr. Body up as well.
Yes. Which now we can kind of forget about.
Yeah,
Mr. Body's body.
Mr. Body's body has done his job, and we will never need him again.
Yep. And so, they decide to lock the weapons away so there can be no more murders.
Because there's nothing else in this house that could possibly be used as a murder weapon.
And they begin arguing now of who gets the key.
Yes, because as a butler, he should hold the key because he buttles things. And obviously he didn't do it because he would have known if he murdered someone.
And he's orchestrating the whole thing to begin with, which is super suspicious.
Everyone in this is so suspicious.
Yes, which their solution is to throw the key out the front door.
Yeah, which with it being such a terrible downpour in the dark of night, fair.
Yeah.
I'll take this as a reasonable thing.
Yep. What are you doing, Hobbs?
Your cat is weird.
Hobbs just came in and just stared underneath us. I think Charlie's in here.
Yeah, somewhere.
There he is. I am sorry, dear listeners. Cats are, weird.
Cats are special.
Yes. And so, now that issue has been taken care of, a new player enters the game.
Yes.
And is asking to use the phone.
His car has broken down.
Which... Do they close the door on his face in this one?
I think they close the... yeah, I think they do. I think they initially open the door, close the door, and then reopen the door.
They do it like 2 or 3 times, and then eventually decide to let him in and lock him in the lounge.
This poor man!
Or, sorry, library.
Yes. Also, how many phones are in this house? A lot. I mean, I know that there's no cell phones at the time, but, like, this is a lot of landlines.
We know there's... There's at least 2.
There's at least 2 that
because they think of putting him in the office, but the 2 dead bodies are there.
Can't put him in the office. He might see the dead bodies.
So they gotta do the library, which is assuming the only other phone. I
assume so, but at the same time, later on, there's a question on where this other policeman, who also gets to use the phone.
Well, it's the same one in the library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, after locking him away... And more blaming of whodunit.
Yep.
They decide to get more brandy.
Yes.
Because,
because they need a drink. And at this point, because everyone knows each other's secrets, they're all tired, everyone could be the murderer, they've all kind of loosened up a little bit.
Yeah.
So everyone's nervous tics have kind of died down until someone knocks at the door. Yep. And then they all come right back.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, as I was, writing up my notes for this, since I was doing it late Monday night, expecting us to record on Tuesday.
I apologize.
I proceed to booze up again myself. I just grabbed a beer or something. Just tired of that day.
I understand. It's Monday.
Yeah. And so Mustard now decides to check on the corpses.
Yes. Also, it should be noted that they did try to check for pulse on Mr. Body the first time. They sent the psychiatrist to check for the pulse. I don't know how many granted, I expect the general people to be able to check a pulse nowadays. I think most people have done at least one round of CPR class of some kind, or first aid class. I don't know what qualifications this man has.
Well, we know he lost his practice for diddling.
He did lose his practice for diddling, but he did not diddle Mr. Body's body.
He undiddled his body.
So,
yes.
He, hovers over him for a second. So, no one in this room is qualified to know if anyone is actually dead.
Yeah. And so with no straight answers, people who don't know horror movies exist.
No, that is exactly what this is. This is a group of people who are all stereotypically in a horror movie who have never seen a horror movie.
And it's also not in a horror movie either.
It could be. There's dead people. Yeah, murder on the loose, man.
I mean, there's dead people in war movies.
That's scary.
And there's technically murderers on the loose, if we want to get technical.
That is also scary.
Yes. And so they decide to split into pairs, as they know...
Scooby fucking Doo style.
Oh, goddamn it, yes. Because it is the smart thing to do.
Enter the next running gag of this movie. 2 people attempting to go through a space that is too small, but neither wanting to back down, and so they body squeeze themselves through like a tube of toothpaste.
And luckily for her, it was not Professor Plum.
It was not Professor Plum.
Which, now I just realized his sexual advances towards Yvette earlier on in the movie really shows character right from the get-go.
Yep. There's details, man.
I wish I had rewatched this movie a couple more times.
There's so many details.
But also, since no one wants to be paired up, no one also wants to go to the spooky places.
Like the attic or the basement.
Yeah, but they have to go because the cops are on the way and they must investigate.
Because, cops can't solve murders by themselves.
Yes. And so as they split up, a mysterious figure now burns the evidence and unlocks the weapon.
Bum, bum, bum.
Mystery. And while they're searching, random dude is still locked in the lounge.
This poor man.
And the killer hits him with the wrench, but right before he's offed, he says that one of them is his boss.
His old boss.
Yes.
Can you believe it? Oh, he's dead.
Yep. And adds to this, Mustard and Miss Scarlet find the secret passage where they find Rando dead.
Now, I know you've not played the board game, so fun board game fact for you who have not played. There are secret passages in the board game, and they go to the rooms that this movie bothered to put them together.
Fascinating.
I know, right?
Are they marked up like bombs in Zelda? Or like the bomb walls?
I think it depends on which version you play. I have a Harry Potter version, and so the Harry Potter version has like things that you flip over, and there's ooh, the stones move to the side, or the statue walks to the left, and now there's an entrance. Is old. It's an old game. So yeah, maybe. I
know you've played board games long enough. When you get tired of having to explain some of the stuff to it, like when we played Watson and Holmes, you got tired of the solution even though you figured it out. Still working on that Welsh accent.
We'll get there.
Yes. And so now a ruckus is made, and Wadsworth tries breaking into the room but throws his shoulder.
Because that's how it works with real wood doors.
Yes.
You're just gonna run from one end of the hall to the other and open the door.
Also, against the hinges.
Against the hinges, and no offense to Tim Curry, but he's no linebacker.
No. And as they're trying to get the door open, Yvette goes to get the gun, but trips over Wadsworth and shoots the chandelier. Also shoots through the door, almost killing Mustard. He
is grazed. I think his shirt is torn.
Yeah.
But, he makes a huge drama out of it.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate that, another detail that never comes back into play. Yvette is very handy with a gun.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, she knew to go get a gun to blow open a lock. This is pre-everyone watching Western films, I think.
Yeah, or Clint Eastwood movies in general.
And then, she doesn't exactly stand real close to that lock. She stands from several feet away and is just, blasting at it. She only hits it twice, one for each lock.
So maybe she's not just the TNA of the movie.
Maybe Yvette did it.
Which, by the way, all the women in this movie, besides, I think, Miss Peacock, all have relatively low cut.
No, Miss Peacock is very,
Peacock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is high turtlenecked.
High turtleneck, a very Cosby sweater-like.
Miss White is not wearing anything revealing. It's just shaped very well. And because she walks around in the alluring manner that she
does have a low-cut shirt. I'm well aware because I paid close attention.
It is not as low-cut as the other two boobalicious women.
No, not at all.
Who, Miss Scarlet almost loses a tit multiple times in this movie.
Yes. And Yvette's just got
They are glued to her.
It's like you said, they're like giant sticking out anime titties.
They're full on anime titties.
Yes. So, as this commotion is coming to a close, an officer has arrived, and they cannot get their story straight.
And they don't know, but you as the audience know that this is not the officer that they called.
No.
This officer is here because he noticed the other dead man's car down the way and wanted to know if he's okay, because this is old-timey times, and police had time for that shit. And
he has to use their phone, and what do?
Lock him in.
Lock him in. Also, he gets suspicious as, they just begin, randomly locking doors around him.
Yeah, and by this point, they have also picked up a new dead body, carried it to the other room, and unceremoniously, like a lump of logs, dumped it on the floor.
Yes. And while the cops locked away, they're all figuring out what to do, and then the cop yells through the door that there's a call from none other than Edgar Hoover.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yes. And so Green is sent to show the officer around as the butler takes the phone call, and the cop wants to know what's in the locked doors, which is just all of them propping up the dead bodies and
pretending to have a fun time.
Yes.
I like the one dead body that they just drenched in alcohol and put him in a chair.
Yeah.
This is good dead body disguising. Pretend he's drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
Passed out, officer. He's fine.
But, I don't know, it's so weird just because, like, the cop doesn't find anything suspicious about all these people just suddenly trying to get their jimmies off.
So, okay. I think this is another old-timey joke that didn't quite make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and like, you kind of get it because, like, it's explained later, like, oh, it's America, it's a free country. And Tim Curry goes, I didn't realize it was that free.
Yes.
So this is supposed to be a swingers party.
Ah.
And that's why they're all nervous when they answer the door, officers, because this is a swingers party, and isn't that a little awkward that a strange man is now intruding on their swingers party? But, you know, he's used the phone, we've finished the door answering, we'll go back to our fun.
I'm sure that happened before. I always associated with the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those jokes that, like, not necessarily saying it's out of pop culture, I think. It's a joke that, for the most part, movies don't bother with anymore. And so because it's not in pop culture, I think a lot of people just kind of, like, forget that that's what the punchline was supposed to be and just accept that now we're making out with dead people.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, now that the cop is satisfied, he is locked back up and the search continues.
Oh, this poor cop.
Mustard and Scarlet find another secret passage.
Dun dun dun.
And a figure turns the lights off. Yvette is strangled with the noose.
I mean, we knew it was coming. The enemy titties had to go.
Yep.
They were too powerful.
Too powerful. The cop is hit on the head with a lead pipe. At
this point, we're lucky if anybody else lives. Jesus Christ.
And a random singing telegram person is shot.
Oh, this poor telegram girl. I love the telegram girl. And
also random.
Yeah. But also, I think singing telegrams, again, a running gag that aren't used anymore. Just because, like, nowadays, if a stranger came to your door and singing telegrammed you, A, no one would answer the door, and B, I think less people would find it cute and fun.
Yep.
And so it's one of those jokes that, like, it's there, you know what it's supposed to be, doesn't quite hit the same.
Yeah. And at this point, everyone is in a fever pitch, about the murders and random people showing up, and all dying around them.
Yeah, this is a lot of deaths for a quaint murder mystery.
Yes. And so, now begins probably my favorite part of the movie.
Mm-hmm. The accusations?
Well, no. Tim Curry, as Wadsworth, of course, begins to recap everything that has happened in the movie before.
Yes, and it's all of the highlights of the whole movie.
Yes.
Honestly, could watch just from here onward, and you'd have the whole thing.
Yes.
But it's brilliant.
Well, and I also think it's his best moment in this movie because not only is he being himself, but he's reenacting everyone else.
He's doing bits of everyone else.
Yes.
Yes.
And we get more reveals.
Mm-hmm.
The cook and Yvette are accomplices, and the motorist was actually invited.
Ah, I knew it.
Yes. We actually find out that Scarlett paid off the cop to keep her business going, and the telegram woman was Professor Plum's diddle patient.
Oh, the poor woman. Murdered helplessly. She came all this way to sing a telegram in the middle of the night in the rain.
She got penetrated with something else.
She ain't bright, is she?
No. And so, the doorbell rings, and there is an old Bible thumper who they just ignore.
They do, they just full on. He's like...
Which, also, he's ignoring the body in the front of the house.
You just stepped right across her.
Yes.
And he's like, the kingdom of God is near. And they're like, we know.
Yep.
Don't have to tell us.
And so, now begins probably the most... I don't want to say controversial part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The most originally upsetting portion of the movie, because for those who don't know, the biggest gag for this movie was that there were 3 different endings that they sent out to different theaters. So
depending on which theater you went to, you would see a completely different ending, and no one knew that there were different endings when it came out. You had to talk to your friend and be like, wow, wasn't it crazy that Wadsworth did it? And your friend would be like, no, Miss White did it. Yeah. And then you'd have to bicker about it. And I think that's hilarious.
I do too. Like, I can understand, like, the initial hatred for it, because I've had that too. Like,
oh, sure.
Oh, I hated that. And then I go back and rewatch and it's like, this is actually genius.
Brilliant. Like, this is trolling on the next level.
Oh, it's so great. And so, the 3 endings were actually originally proposed by John Landis, but were actually finished by the director Jonathan Lynn. Mm-hmm. So, the first ending is Yvette and Scarlet centered. Yes. Where Scarlet knew everyone's secrets and was going to sell them to the highest bidder.
Because that's her real business.
And the FBI comes into the rescue.
Go, 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 go!
And Wadsworth was the chief. Yes. That's why he had the phone call from the director. Yes. And also, he can't count.
No, he cannot count. Because there's a whole bit about math, and honestly, I can't count neither. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals, I don't know.
I got about 2/3 into the movie taking extensive notes.
And then you were like, none of this matters?
Yes, exactly.
No, it doesn't. None of it matters, because none of the details that you would need to actually pin any of these endings is available. You don't actually get a smoking gun from any of them.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
And so the second ending is Miss Peacock was a murderer. Yes. Wadsworth never called the cops, and Wadsworth was an FBI agent and arrests her.
The whole time. Amazing.
Yes. And so, third ending, which is probably my favorite.
It's my favorite. Yeah, okay. It's my favorite ending too.
Wadsworth is the real Mr. Body, and killed by Mr. Green, who is an FBI agent, and that they are all guilty and shall be arrested.
And he's gonna go home and sleep with his wife.
Yes.
So
the cheesiest.
It's said.
It's the most 50s American machoist ending.
And it's clearly said in a way that's meant to be like, this is a dumb punchline. Mm-hmm. Not like, oh, it was a gag the whole time. No, like, this is like him being like, ha ha.
Yeah. My gayness was all an act. Ha ha ha.
Totally, maybe.
Yes.
And then, of course, there is the secret 4th ending.
That was never released because it was removed because Lynn...
It was dumb.
Thought it was stupid. It
is dumb.
Basically what happened. It's more convoluted than all the others. Yes. The others are done in like 3 minutes. Yeah. This one would have taken...
It would have added another 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it turns out that Wadsworth committed all the murders as he was motivated by a desire for perfection. He
wasn't the perfect husband, nor the perfect butler.
And so he was going to commit the perfect murder.
Which, that's a jump.
After failing as a butler. And the champagne was poisoned, but the FBI arrives and arrests him, and then he breaks free, steals a police car, and is attacked by 3 police dogs in the back.
Yes. Now,
stupid.
We know this ending, because there was a rumor for a few years. I remember once this film started getting, like, cult following, there was a rumor that, like, oh, this is the lost ending, and it will be found again someday. It's in the book. If you desperately want to, like, fully experience this ending, go find the clue book. It's fully written out there. I mean, it's fine.
Okay.
I don't hate this ending in the book, because, like, by that point, you've got the ball rolling.
Okay.
It's like, oh, it's one more ending, and it doesn't take that long to get through, and it does kind of, like, do a 180 on all the other endings.
Yeah.
But, yeah, for the movie, it's not needed. It would have added a lot more time. This movie's already a little bit long for what it is, and I think another 10 minutes would have been dragging it.
Okay, so I think it's long for what it is if you're watching all 3 endings back to back.
And which is, of course, how you have to watch it now, unless you buy the special DVD copy.
Which, the DVD copy, you can play
That's the only special feature.
Yeah, well, you can play,
it will play all 3 back to back if you want.
But you can have it select a random one.
Which is a lot of fun and I think is really cute.
Yeah, I do too.
I have this movie on VHS tape, which honestly, the quality on the VHS tape really, like, hammers home this movie to me. I love the graininess. I love the little lines that pop up at the beginning.
Yeah.
It has the right vibe for this movie. And in the VHS tape, you're forced to watch all of them back to back to back to back to back. And there's a cute little card that pops up in between saying, but this is what really happened. And that sort of, it's like SpongeBob 20 years later. Which it's cute. It's in the same font as the beginning intro, so it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, that's Clue. I mean, there's not
a lot, but there is. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you brought up so many, like, little details that, I mean, to be fair, I've only seen this movie, like, 3 times.
I watch this movie every month.
I know you do.
I love this movie.
You have been talking about this movie since I think I met you.
Yes.
I think this was one of the first movies you brought up to me.
And I think part of that is because I am a detail-oriented movie watcher, so I like when there's an absorbent amount of stuff to try and catch in a movie, even if the plot isn't the detail-oriented thing. Honestly, that hinders it most of the time.
Yeah.
I like TV shows that you have to watch the same thing 4 or 5 times to get all of the bits, like Gravity Falls.
Okay.
So I like this movie because of that, because every single time I watch it, a different line sticks out to me, or a different character tick sticks out, or, this background bit or this prop is done in such a way that, like, reminisces here or there.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so it's kind of like how what was it? I was having the guys watch something. Oh, it was Akira. And
yes. It's similar to how you can watch Akira a ton of times.
Yeah, but I was talking about the comparison to the manga, and I could only get up to a certain portion because I've only read the first 2 so far.
Fair.
So, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, I get that now. But also, you have the background for it.
I do.
Because I know absolutely nothing about Clue other than this movie, the most part. I know it was a board game, and
then the other background that really does add to Clue is I have a great love of Monty Python humor.
Yes.
And then the other thing I have a great love for is dumbass murder mysteries. Example being Agatha Christie-style murders.
To be fair...
Murder, She Wrote is one of my favorite TV shows of all time.
To be fair, you just like dumb movies in general.
I do love dumb movies.
Because I was talking to your husband about this because...
It bothers him so much.
Well, not just that, but like we have the hardest time finding like a truly bad movie.
Because I like all of them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have to... I think we'll end up having to revert to Tim Allen, Zoom.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I have seen bad movies, but most of the time the bad movie that I qualify as bad is bad because it's poorly executed to the point of it's almost unwatchable.
Oh.
So there's, like, some B movies that, like, are clearly just a rip on a popular movie.
Yeah, or like some of my exploitation films that I have that are just gore for the sake of gore and sexualization.
Example being, Swan Princess, the 4th one, or Land Before Time, the 7th one. They are not necessary. They are terrible.
Exactly, but you've gotten into them.
But I've watched them.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Where Clue is a weird niche of a bunch of really specific things that I don't think a lot of people realized they liked at the time that this movie came out. True crime and like cute murder mysteries weren't a huge hit.
I will argue against that because I'm still going through last podcast on the left again. They've brought up multiple times that, like, serial killers and true crime has always been fascinating.
It's always been fascinating. There wasn't a cult around it.
No, You
didn't have a nationwide following to be a fan with. You had friends who liked it, but it's like anime in the early 90s and 80s in America.
The Germans were a bit different then.
Fair.
The Germans and the English had true crime followings since, like, as long as we've had written record from them.
Oh, for sure. But I think for a lot of American audiences, especially when the time period that this movie came out, you could like those things. There's no doubt about that. But you didn't have a nationwide group who was a murderino. Yeah,
because we grew up on this stuff, I do blame Unsolved Mysteries for a lot of our fascinations.
Unsolved Mysteries, Cold Case, Forensic Files, all of those shows started the like nationwide movement of like, oh, you like that too?
Yeah.
Oh, we can all like this together and it's not weird? Great. Kind of like how sci-fi is now a normal franchise. No one's like a sci-fi nerd to the point that it was back when we were kids.
Yes, exactly. Like, and I think that's part of it too, is because we're not kids anymore and we've carried that stuff over with us into adulthood.
Very true. And I also think that in our current year of our Lord, there's not a right or wrong fandom anymore.
No.
You're not a total nerd for liking Star Wars. You're not a total, like, sports head for watching every single, like, Chiefs game, because everything is so available. You don't have to go out of your way to find anything anymore. And so because it's all available, it's made the entire world be able to go, well, I want to watch it. I don't have to watch it with friends. I don't have to go to the movie theater to see it.
Yeah.
I can see if I like it. Oh, I do. Okay, this is fine.
Yeah, well, and also, because we got to think about movies at the same time, too, because I actually was thinking about that a little bit today, as I was rearranging parts of my apartment. I have an old CD player, or a stereo system that my parents got for me after I graduated high school.
Yeah, which even when we graduated high school, that was like the cusp of being like, I'm gonna use it, I swear.
Well, no, I did use it because it also had like the iPod
dock. You had
like,
the special one.
Yes, I got a
I
nice
had a full-on radio with a CD and a cassette player.
Yeah, mine was CD, radio, and iPod, which was the cusp of that.
Well, and back in the day, we were so convinced the iPod was going to be forever.
Yeah, we didn't know that streaming was coming. Like, Netflix was still in its burgeoning days, and it was a DVD service.
It was, and like, you know, you still, like, went to the store to rent stuff. And, like, yeah, your phone could play that, but, like, boy, it's so much faster with an iPod.
Yeah.
And it's so small and easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Times have changed, and so... Wow, that was
Charlie.
A long one.
You can grab your fluff.
I know.
I'm so ready for daylight savings to...
For the daylight to come back.
Yeah, he's so awful.
You got one more month.
I know. And so, on a little side note from Clue, I don't know how I feel about this, because the first one is so well orchestrated that there has been a movie in the works.
Yes.
Still in pre-production.
It's been going for ages.
But it was announced in 2008.
Yeah, and it's still going.
Yeah.
They're still announcing, like, oh no, we promise, guys, it's coming.
See,
I feel like Knives Out already did it. I feel like they don't have to do it anymore. Knives Out took this movie franchise to the next level. Yeah. To where it needed to be for modern audiences.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, that Clue being set as a historical piece.
And it came out in the 80s. Solidly in the 80s.
Yeah. So still like 30 years after, or close to 30 years after the events are supposed to be set.
It's a retro piece based in vintage times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I don't think...
It's hard to reproduce that nowadays.
Yeah, like...
Like, I know 80s stylings in movies is coming back. But, like, it always is going to feel like a nostalgic version, as opposed to this, which is unapologetically, like, an 80s inspiration of what it was like in the 50s and 60s. Yeah,
because it makes me think of, like, how JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, going into weeb culture.
Oh.
Because the most recent JoJo that I started, I still haven't gotten very far on, is set in the 90s.
Yeah, that's right.
And the 90s is such a weird time.
The 90s are vintage now, dude. Isn't that weird?
Yes, no, it's super weird, but also just looking at it, because, like, we look at fashion of, like, the 70s and stuff, and like, oh, that was so horrible. The 90s was worse.
It was terrible. Are you kidding me? I had so many chokers I was not allowed to wear. I wanted desperately. And now, as an almost 30-year-old adult, I desperately want to dress like a 90-year-old child that was dumped in a Claire's and shaken around.
I mean, I think part of it is because of computers, because we were able to do such more advanced designs and printing.
I also think that, like, part of the reason why we've seen, like, especially in this, like, starting in the 60s, but really strongly in the 70s, every single decade is defined, and, like, almost the second the clock hits the next one, that one's old news, and it's now, like, a retro style that you can remember back to, even if you weren't there for it.
Yeah.
And so, like, because of that, we've, like, hit a fast track on, like, on making nostalgic stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, 90s is already, like, nostalgic stuff. The 2000s is already nostalgic stuff. We're getting really close for the tens to have nostalgic stuff to it.
Yeah, because it's a decade afterwards, and
yeah, like we're getting to the point where like people are being like, no, that's the 2010s. That's what that genre looked like. That's what it is defined by. We're getting close to the kids who were born when we were becoming adults. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't always quite that fast paced. Granted, every decade, like people have always wanted to like remember things differently and put a new foot forward. Mm-hmm. But there was enough time in between stuff that you could be like, oh, it was, 40s, 30s. There was the 1900s, there's the 20s and the 10s. And yeah, they are different depending on like which small bit you're looking at. Yeah. But you could which small bit you're looking at? Yeah, like, example being clothing. The clothing fashion in the 1900s was fast-paced. Especially compared to, like, the 1800s. Yeah. Which, that was slow. But, like, it was, but, like, you can also make a broad gesture and get the gist, and you'd be okay. Yeah. Well, and I think now we're honestly seeing a pushback from that, too. Especially people our age who are looking for clothes that are durable and... last, yeah. Stuff that's not going to be gone in a few years. Yeah. Exactly. And so, I think part of the reason why... I don't want them to remake Clue the way that they were wanting to. Yeah. Is because Clue is never going to be able to truly be recreated. It will always feel like a fake reproduction. Yeah. Whereas with Knives Out, even though I know it's not actually Clue, I know it's not the remake of Clue, but it's got the same soul. Yeah. And it's because it's current humor for current audiences with the current level of gore that we're used to, the current level of murder we're used to. Yeah. There's not 8 bodies. There's one. Yeah, well... It's comedic, but in a serious and almost like crime scene TV show sort of way. Yeah. But at the same time, it's pretending for the old-timey sake, just like Clue did. But it's got that current lens attached to it the whole way through. And so that's why I don't necessarily want a Clue remake. Even though I love this movie, and I would love to have more like it, I don't want another Clue. Yeah, no, I get that, because I feel the same way whenever, like, there's an old movie I love, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna remake it. Like, most recent I saw, because I don't keep up with a lot of remakes, Overboard. Yeah, fair. I saw that, I'm like, that is going to be garbage. Mm-hmm. Because it's just one of those movies that is of its time, and you can't really reproduce. And I think that's one thing, too, is, like, especially movies of the 80s and 90s. Yeah. They're still at that point where they hold up today. Mm-hmm. And so there's not a feeling to need... I don't feel that there's a need to remake them. No. Yeah, exactly. And, like, Clue is one of the few ones that has become not... Like, it didn't do well when it came out. We've gone over that. But, like, it has become a huge cult classic. Yeah. To the point where they're still releasing DVDs of it. Yeah. But when they say remake, they never say sequel. They are just going to remake Clue, because Clue is one of the few cult-loved classics. So if they made it, they know they'd make money. People would go see it. Yeah. But you can't make a second one. No. You know what I mean? Yeah, because you can't pull the same stunt again of releasing 3 endings. It can't be the same characters either. Like, you might be able to get away with one recurring character. Yeah. But all of them together, that'd be stretching it. You'd already know the ending at that point. Yeah, I mean... And so Clue is Clue, I think, is one of the very few, like, full heavy hitter cult classics that they physically can't make a sequel to. Yeah. And I mean, we've already seen that they're making sequels out of stuff that we never thought they would. Man, I don't know. I saw, I think, Beastmaster's getting a remake. I mean, as long as they stop dyeing the tiger black. I don't know. I don't know. We're in this weird era because, like... We're in an era of, like, it's constant consumption. And so, like, from a business standpoint, I can understand. Like, as a product designer, I can see why you'd want to continue making the thing that people like. Yeah. Like, I mean, it worked for Harry Potter. We made 8 of those, and people loved them. But, like, it doesn't necessarily work every time. Well, and we're also kind of getting almost intentional cult movies. Yes. Specifically from independent studios. The independent studios, I think, are, like, the weird wild card out there right now. And like, we're seeing that from indie games, too, where it's so easy to get a hold of them nowadays if you want to. Yeah. That it's not as an indie creator, you don't necessarily have the same hurdle that you did in the 80s or the 70s.
Yeah, because now, and also we're not working with a physical medium for the most part anymore, but we're also at a point where the independents are making, for the most part, better stuff than big budget Hollywood box office or AAA titles.
And like, it's not even just like, oh, we've made a full movie that is better than what they can. Like, I'm seeing shorts, I'm seeing animations that they know how long people want to watch. They know what type of things that people want to watch because they're part of the culture that they want to create.
Yeah, like Elijah Wood and the other guy who created Spectravision.
Yeah.
I re-listened to their interview again recently, and they brought up that they just happened to do it in the start of a renaissance of not lower budget but offshoot horror films, cult movies, or genre pieces. And I think honestly, there's been a lot of directors who have brought genre pieces to light, especially like with murder mysteries.
Yes, and we're seeing, and granted, murder mystery I think has been one of the few ones that's a little slow on the whole cult uptake. There's been a ton of remakes of classics, especially poor Agatha Christie's works that's just being beaten to death at this point.
Oh, Murder on the Orient Express was...
It was rough.
That's one word for it.
It's not the same as my beloved old-timey classic version of it.
Fat, no-necked Perot.
He is supposed to be shaped like an egg, in his defense.
Yeah. Also, that's another thing, is like, all these caricatures, they're always end up playing by these dashing, decently looking people.
Yes, they are. And I think we are so close to having a renaissance of cult 80s and 90s style terrible movies.
Yeah.
Not the good ones that like we've already been getting remakes of, but like the ones where people went, this was rough. It's still rough. But like, it's getting to the point where that's missing from a lot of stuff.
But then we also, on the other hand, have movies that are playing homage to it.
True.
Like, we've brought up Knives Out multiple times because it is one of the...
It is
wittiest movies I've watched in a long time, and best marketing I've seen, because this is one of the few movies that I did see trailers for, and they left out the main character, and I love that. But they were just so on the nose of like the throne that's got all the knives pointing to people.
Yes. Well, and they also did something intentional that was specific to the genre. So for the murder mystery genre, it is so common and so part of the genre to have one character either detective it or accidentally find all these goddamn bodies. And it's almost to the point of a trope. And we haven't seen someone for the movies attempt to make that character. Well, which is why I don't think Clue would work. It's the odd man out in the murder industry where it has the same vibes as things like Murder, She Wrote, you know, all the Agatha Christie's, Miss Marples, the Poirot's, without having a central character who has anything to do with anything else in this world.
Well, and I like that you bring that up, because I think, and we kind of talked about it a little bit in our Meg episode, where the director recognized that he can't do Jaws.
No, Jaws has been done. Yeah.
I think if for them to make a successful remake, they would have to acknowledge that the other one came before.
Yes.
Oh, I got a funny parody idea. A group of people break into the house to investigate to find out what actually happened. Like Ghost Hunter style.
That, or like, it's like a crime scene detective show.
Yes.
Where like, they full on have to investigate these, 5-6 murders that actually happened. There's real dead bodies here.
And it all sums up with them arguing about which ending's real.
Yes.
Yes.
That could work, but that's not the path that Hollywood wants to take.
Of course not.
But I think we're really close to having independent film to the point where it's going to be comfortable and ready, maybe not even full-length movie, but to create this style of humor, this speed of writing and joke back and forthing. This style of humor is definitely a genre in a very subgenre-esque sort of way.
Yeah.
Where we're so close to being back to it.
Yeah. I mean...
We dance around it with a bunch of new stuff that comes out, especially in the super, like, left field, I just make something and put it up on the internet sort of field. We're so close there, and once we hit it there, I think it will start to peel off. Yeah,
and I think, again, because I love horror films, and I buy a stupid amount of them, without ever doing any research, which is why I have a couple movies that I did not expect they were going to turn out the way they did.
Surprise!
Yes. But, like, horror definitely has become the pioneer in that.
Yes, and it always has, because it's not held back by anything.
Exactly.
People who go to horror movies aren't expecting a thing.
Well, and horror's also generally been snubbed by the major market. That's another genre that's had, like, a more prolific, everyone's okay with it, but, like, there's still pockets of it that's still... Yes. It's slowly becoming more accepted.
It definitely is, but I think horror is still the last man standing who they've got room to experiment. Because, there's always the main hitter horrors that everyone kind of knows, but...
The Hollywood Saw, I Know What You Did Last Summer, new Scream movie coming out.
But they're always based off of the one that took a chance in, like, the 70s or 80s. And, like, it made it, everyone saw it, so they're going to keep going. But there's, under that layer, like, especially if... And those of you who like horror, you say, oh, I like horror, and someone in the group is like, oh, me too. And you're like, what movies have you seen? And you're like trying to dig to see how far down they've gotten. And if they say and if they're like, oh, well, my favorite one is this one, and you're like, have you seen this? And they're like, no. And you're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Back it up.
Well, I've actually been going through that. I'm glad you brought that up. Again, plug our Instagram page, because I've started a series of reviews on Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Or Friday the 13th.
I love Friday the 13th.
Well, I have a little bit of a different appreciation for it. I don't think they're great movies.
No, they're not.
But they play a thin line between...
They test some boundaries.
Well, not even that. They just borderline generic, but eclectic, because they're pulling from so many sources. Like, I was talking to Sugi a little bit earlier on his stream today, where he was, I brought it up that in Friday the 13th Part 2, the main character, Jason, the bag on his head feels very much like the town that dreaded sundown. Same with the outfit and everything. So again, they're pulling from a different source. And maybe that's what Clue needs, is that they need to pull from not just the true crime, they do need to pull from the true crime.
But we've started to see that.
Which we saw in Knives Out,
we did. We've also started to see it in a couple, this was a couple years ago, but we've started to see it in a couple of, they're always coming out as like, Netflix originals, TV shows, or even like they're advertised as documentaries.
I
cannot say that word, but they're always advertised as one of those. But once you get into them, you're like, oh no, this is something slightly different. This is pulling from real world people, real world experiences.
Poughkeepsie tapes.
Arguably a root source for something else to grow from. Yeah. And so I think we're getting to the point where, yes, the humor of Clue is definitely its own thing. Mm-hmm. The murder part of Clue, also its own thing. And Clue just happened to get those things overlapped perfectly. But I think we're getting so close with the murder group to be able to, like, break that next level and have a separate subgenre of the murder mystery group.
Yeah. I'm curious. I've never really been in... I mean... I tangentially have been into murder mysteries.
It's always running alongside the horror genre, but it's always been the same. It hasn't branched out the same way horror has. Yeah,
which, I mean, maybe is just a tribute to how good Agatha Christie's writing was in her formulas.
Honestly, there's a reason she's the queen of murder mysteries, but we are so close because there's a bunch of stuff that was experimental in the 90s that followed the same formula that she had. But it wasn't her, and it was completely different characters and completely different root sources. A good example is a British one called Rosemary and Thyme. Both of them are gardeners, and somehow gardening has to do with murder. Again, it is a different root source. It didn't last, which makes me very sad. I love that show. Yeah. But now that people have had time to digest it and go through all of the material, people are ready for the nuances that an overarching genre makes.
Yeah.
Because I think this was a niche genre for a long time. Murder mystery.
It still is.
It is, but we're getting so close for it to be big enough to start bubbling off.
Well, and I think the biggest issue with murder mystery is the proliferation of true crime.
Yes.
That is the biggest issue that I see, because it toes the line so heavily of being... Because that's the thing about murder mysteries is they're caricatures.
They are. And that's part of their charm.
Yes. But they have to toe that line of being a caricature and actually touching on true crime.
Yes.
Like, if they did like a Zodiac murder mystery.
Which, I mean, we've seen people play with it before.
Yeah.
And it's usually done in a more serious way, but I think we're getting really close to, especially now that, like, being a murder mystery fan has become so mainstream. Mm-hmm. It's got its own genre on multiple platforms. It's got its own heavy-hitting podcasts. It's got its own radio shows. I mean, like, we've gotten to the point where everyone has accepted, just like with science fiction, murder, or horror, and, like, rom-coms.
Yeah.
That, like, we're getting so close to that being a big enough bubble that it can, like, pop, and we can have lots of little bubbles of different kinds. But we're not there yet, and that makes me really question on whether or not we need another clue.
No, and I completely understand you. Like, I've loved cosmic horror before I knew what cosmic horror was.
Fair. Yeah.
And there has been such a proliferation of cosmic horror movies in H.P. Lovecraft's work that has been brought into the mainstream again.
It's coming back, yeah.
Which is fascinating for me, too, just because of how much racist bullshit is in H.P. Lovecraft's work.
It flew under the radar for so long because it was such a niche thing, and now that people realize that they love it, a lot of people are being like, what if we got rid of all the weird bits? Yeah. And it was just cosmic horror.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what if it wasn't H.P. Lovecraft? What if it was cosmic?
Yeah, what if we took the creatures, but removed his negative aspect towards minorities?
And literally anyone that wasn't him.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, it was so weird.
But
yeah. I think the subgenres are getting so close. And that makes me excited because Knives Out did well. Mm-hmm. And they've already announced that, like, it's going to be a thing.
There's going to be a spin-off where the detective from it continues his adventures. Or prequels his adventures. I don't know yet. And
we're seeing so many TV shows that are taking new approaches to it. We're seeing a lot of video games that are taking new approaches to it. L.A. Noire took a full different spin on it. If you want to call L.A. Noire a murder mystery, which it kind of is. It's copy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel that too because I play a lot of RPGs. And
yeah, RPGs are, I think, a good starting point, kind of like horror, where they know who their audience is and that their audience is going to try it out, and if they don't like it, it's fine.
Yeah.
We'll still play it.
We'll still play 80 hours of that game even though we hate it.
But they also know that their fan base is willing to say, like, what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
And not in such a way that, like, a lot of mainstream ones where it's like, oh, it's garbage, meh, but more like a, hey, we liked the farming aspect of here, can we get more of that, but with seasons and chickens?
Yeah, which, I mean, there's been a lot to that, and that's a whole other conversation, too.
There is, but I think we're so close. We're so close to having indie things, not just for murder mystery, but for a bunch of stuff.
Well, and I mean, look at the podcast community in general.
Oh, sure.
Almost everything in podcast started off as DIYs.
Oh, sure. And like
now it's become so prolificated that mainstream media is kind of drowning a lot of them out.
And, like, honestly, like, the few, like, front runners that did do well way back in the day before podcasting was podcasting, they were radio shows. And they just happened to be weekly episodes in a way.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, like, Car Talk, which I love. It's a podcast, but it was on the radio.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
And see, you're more into podcasts than I was. Like, I've started getting into them in, like, the past 3 years or so since knowing you.
And it's definitely one of those things, just like with movies and with movie genres, where, like, once you find one, especially now that it's starting to take off, you will eventually find more. It's just, sometimes you have to wait for people to make it, or make it yourself.
Yeah.
Come on, people, make me a new clue.
I mean, that's exactly what we did, is we were trying to find something to do with our love for movies and just a creative outlet, and podcast just was perfect.
Yeah, and also talking about movies like Clue, which came out in the 1980s, and no one is talking about now.
But I also think it's important because, like, we do need to examine these movies and why they won't work today and why they are classics.
And also, like, I hope that now that the world is more of a two-way communication street, even more so than it ever has been, that when we say, like, we want more Clue, but we don't want Clue. Yeah. People in the position to be able to make that happen can understand that. And I really think we're getting so close. I'm so excited for the movies that are coming out, not just this upcoming year, but in a couple of years. The ones they keep promising are going to come. Yeah. I'm very excited to see where these go. Exactly. And so, at the end, what are your final thoughts on Clue, Chris? And would you recommend it? I would recommend it. I think Clue is a lot of fun. Clue is a good one watch for everyone, but if you're a detail-oriented person like me, this is one of the ones that I would recommend actually buying and watching it a ton of times. Yeah. Maybe not back-to-back, but, you know, a couple times a year, this is a fun one to pop on. Yeah, well, currently in the start of 2021, it's on Amazon right now. It is, bless it. But I still bought the DVD. And honestly, like, it's one of those old movies where, yes, it looks fine remastered. It looks fine when you rent it from Amazon or rent the DVD, but you find this on VHS tape, man, it feels charming. Well, that's also your nostalgia talking about it. Very much so, but boy, does it hit hard with this one. Yeah. Well, for me, since I don't have the nostalgia, I've only been exposed to this movie in the past couple of years. I actually find this movie quite charming. It is. I love the stupid Monty Python-like humor. It's American Monty Python. Tim Curry is actually everyone really in this movie is gold. But honestly, like, yeah, everyone's gold in this movie. Honestly, I know Tim Curry's been in a lot of stuff. This is a really good Tim Curry being full Tim Curry. Yeah. And so, like, for me, since I don't have the nostalgia goggles, I still highly recommend this movie just because it took its chances. It really did. It took a risk and it did like, as trolly as it was, I highly appreciate that. Because I went into it seriously trying to, like, find what's going to be the best ending to wrap everything up. The answer is none of them. Exactly. The answer is truly none of them. It makes me think of the opening monologue to Rubber. Yes. It is. It's an homage to the No Reason. Yes. Yeah. Yes, it is. Exactly. And I honestly think with Clue, this is one of the few, like, murder mysteries that really don't have an age range either. No. This isn't one that's just for the kiddie ones. This isn't one that's just for the hard hitters. This one really nicely blends all over the place. Yeah, no, I honestly quite love this movie. I do too. Even though it's a lot. Yeah, I actually do want more people to watch it. I mean, this is one of the ones that when your friend comes over and you find out they haven't watched it, you're like, oh my god, we need to watch Clue. Yeah. 2 or 3 years of you saying, let's watch Clue, and then finally, like, I think it was a Thanksgiving dinner, we're like, let's watch it. It's on, yeah. Yeah. This is one of those movies, and you will become one of those people, and I do not apologize for it. Yes, I highly agree, and I honestly am in the same camp as you, that I want something more with it, but again, I don't want Clue. I don't want Clue, but I want more. Yes. I agree. And I think Knives Out hit that happy. Yeah. Perfect. I love Knives Out. Yeah. So, anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. Thank you, Captain Ketchup. And you, Miss Magenta. And now, I am going to go home and sleep with myself. Because you're not married. Yes. Thanks for listening. Peace.